Okay, thank you, Amanda. Um, I guess this is Good Morning America. And I think we we could benefit from some stabilization, shall I say. And therefore, maybe we should, and we are here gathered, we'll do a guided, to some degree, guided meditation. The form of Buddhism that I grew up in was not verbally guided. There were other types of communication. Um, Most of the meditation, uh, what we call meditation, what the Japanese call zazen, just sitting, or shikantaza, is a form of what we could call meditation, whereby there's no object of medication and there's no subject of meditation. Um, Sometimes when Tibetan Rinpoches would come to visit us at the Zen Center, uh, particularly at the monastery, Zen Mountain Center, or the farm, Green Gulch Farm, they would be surprised to see, or they would express some surprise in seeing that students, whether beginning students or mature students, just 2 weeks in or 20 years in, we're sitting still in silent meditation with no object of meditation. Someone has described, Gary Snyder, in fact, a well-known poet, uh, that Zen uh, drops you to the bottom of the well, and then you spiral up learning, and that he articulated that Tibetan Buddhism was spiraling down to the bottom of the well. That is, with various of the articulated practices and experiences along the way. My experience is that when we hang out together, we're in the same space. However we might define it. And yet, both practices are deeply based in what we call bodhicitta, the thought of enlightenment, and also the bodhisattva vows. So, with that being said, we'll head off for a meditation in which I'll provide some guidance, but mostly silent. And we could say, if there were an object of this meditation, it would be what a Theravadan monk would call stabilization. And I think all of us could benefit from some stabilization considering what's going on in the world today. So I'll ring the bell to begin and then give some instruction. So if we're able, physically able, where we are, to sit up straight in our chairs, or if we're on a cushion, sit up straight on our cushion. In a chair, our feet flat on the ground or on the floor. Our weight on our buttocks and our sits bones, our shoulders over our pelvis, our back straight, supporting ourselves under our own strength. If we need to sit back in a chair or a sofa, that's perfectly okay. Our hands can be palms down on our knees or nested in our lap in what we Zen people call the cosmic mudra, which is our right hand, our left hand on top, the end fingers, the ends of the fingers of the left hand on top of the right, and our thumbs coming together like this to form a circle connection. And this rests in our lap just below our navel. We're breathing through our nose. Our chin is in a slight bit, not up and not tightly down. Our mouth is lightly closed. Our lips are touching, our teeth are touching. The tongue is at the front roof of our mouth, where our teeth and the roof of our mouth come together. Our eyes are at a 60-degree angle towards the floor with a gentle gaze, not focused on anything in particular, not out of focus, just a receptive gaze. And again, we're breathing through our nose. We want to make contact with the physical sensation, wherever we may feel it, in our body, of our in-breath and our out-breath, and bring our awareness to that place. And whatever thoughts or feelings we're experiencing, just letting them be. Not trying to push them away, not trying to calm ourselves, not trying to analyze. Allow the thoughts to be like the objects in the room. And it's important to make contact with the physical sensation, awareness of the physical sensation of breath. Just allowing ourselves to fully settle into the chair, into the cushion. And as we do this, I would like you to try taking your right hand and placing the palm of your right hand on your diaphragm. And bringing your awareness to that place where the palm of your right hand and your diaphragm meet. And becoming aware of the rise and fall of your diaphragm as you breathe in and breathe out. Bringing your awareness down into your torso, down into your body. Aware of the rise and fall of your diaphragm. We're not trying to breathe in any particular way. However our breath is occurring, simply aware of the rise and the fall of our diaphragm, the filling and emptying of our lungs. what our neuroscientists tell us about this process is that we're actually affecting our nervous system. As we bring our awareness down into our body and become aware of our diaphragm, we're moving from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system. We're moving from adrenaline and cortisol to acetylcholine. Our heart rate slows, our respiration rate slows, our blood pressure drops a little. And as our belly relaxes, serotonin is released from the neurotransmitters in our belly. This is the magic of what the Japanese call the hara and the Chinese call the dantian. Just breath, just a pulsing body, a rising and a falling diaphragm. When we feel as though we can maintain our awareness of our diaphragm and our breath without our hand on the palm of our hand on our diaphragm, you're welcome to place the hand back in your lap. If at any time thoughts, feelings become intrusive and take our attention away from the physical sensation and experience of breathing, you're welcome to bring your hand back to your diaphragm to help bring your attention back into your body. in this process, there's a willingness to be present with whatever thoughts or feelings, discomfort or restlessness that may be occurring at this very moment. For this period of time that we're meditating. Again, our neuroscientists have informed us that even if we feel while we're sitting this way, paying attention to our breathing and the rising and falling of our diaphragm, even though our thoughts may be intrusive, our feelings strong, our restlessness, in fact, well, in scientific fact, our heart rate is slowing. Our respiration rate is slowing. And our blood pressure is dropping. You might say this is a way of seeing that whatever we think may be happening may not actually be what is happening. As our heart rate slows, as our respiration rate slows, as our blood pressure drops, as our belly relaxes. People often report feeling more stable, spacious, connected. And find this carries through to activities in our life. The full experience of hand-eye coordination, whether it be washing the dishes and feeling the warm water and smelling the soap, or writing, simply writing with our hand in a pen or a pencil, crocheting, some activity which engages body and mind completely. Developing the capacity to give our full attention to our diaphragm, to our belly, to our shoulders and our feet, to our thumbs and our elbows and our lips and our tongue. To feel our eyeballs and eyelids, our cheeks and our upper lip. The filling and emptying of our lungs. Each breath completely unique. Deep or shallow, fast or slow. There's no perfect breath, just breath. Literally, we're breathing, our breath is shared. What we call our breath is shared. We're breathing with the chemical reactions of stones to the atmosphere. We're breathing with mold. We're breathing with trees. We're exchanging carbon dioxide for oxygen in the simplest way to think about it. The expanse of our breath, what we call our breath, reaches across, pulses even with the Amazon. Pulses with the bacteria in our guts. An infinite expanse. Beyond our measurement. Each of us unique, an aggregation of causes and conditions, giving rise to what we might call an identity, and yet arising together, interconnected, entangled, with trees, rocks, stones, distant galaxies. Our sacrum in our shoulder, the back of our neck. Nothing is still. Everything is pulsing. Okay. Uh, we'll take a short break and then return together. Okay? And I have some entertainment to provide. Thank you. So, Amanda, would you give me the high sign? Should I begin?
You are good to go.
Okay. Are we here? Okay. Um, hello again. Welcome back. I wanted to share, or I am going to share, um, some readings, both a reading that I will read aloud and comment a little bit as we go, and then some composition, some writing that occurred is in deep relationship with the text I'll read from. Now, this isn't a Buddhist text. It comes from a book called Arts of Living on a Damaged Planet, with multiple editors, but the lead editor was a woman, or is a woman, by the name of Anat Singh, who's an anthropologist and teaches at Aarhus University in Denmark, and also, I love this department at Santa Cruz, the History of Consciousness department at the University of California at Santa Cruz. And this is what the book looks like, if we can see it, and it's not reversed. And it's done so one side is this way, and then the flip side is the other way. And it's called Arts of Living on a Damaged Planet, Monsters, and the other side is Ghosts. And this essay is by another person, I think now a retired professor from the University of Santa Cruz in the same department, the History of Consciousness, Donna Haraway. And the title of the essay is SYM, S-Y-M, Biogenesis. Sympoiesis, and art science activisms for staying with the trouble. One of my understandings of Buddhist practice is learning to stay with the trouble. So I'll begin to read from her essay and see where we go. Sympoiesis is a simple word. It means making with. Nothing makes itself. Nothing is really auto-poetic or self-organizing. In the words of the Inupiat computer world game, Earthlings are never alone. So a short story about the Never Alone game is the Inupiat were realizing they were losing their young to, I guess, the modern world, and the young were no longer connected with their culture. They were playing computer games. So, with help, they created a computer game called Never Alone, in which there's a young Inupiat girl uh, living in the Arctic, and the village is undergoing a series of unusually strong winter storms, blizzards, I guess we'd call them. And she decides on her own that she's going to go out and find out why this is happening. And she starts to walk across the Arctic. And as she goes across the Arctic, she bumps into natural phenomena that are part of the history and lore of the Inupiat. And there are links, as she does this, to explanations and relationships to the mythology and the cosmology and just the natural law of how to survive in the Arctic appear. She also makes friends with an Arctic fox. And they travel together. You have the choice if you play the game. The fox and the young girl can just be friends traveling together, or you can be the fox and the girl, or fox or the girl. And you travel together but separately. At any rate, I found it quite informative. But this never alone, and we live in a world in which aloneness, even though we're in proximity, haunts us. That is the radical implication of symbiosis. Earthlings are never alone. That is the radical implication of symbiosis. Symbiosis is a word proper to complex, dynamic, responsive, situated, like right here, right exactly where we are. Historical systems. It is a word for worlding. Another word for these sympoetic entities is holobionts. Holo, H-O-L-O, biont, B-I-O-N-T-S, or etymologically, entire beings, or safe and sound beings. This is the nature of never alone and fully entangled. What in Buddhism in the West has been translated as interdependence. And over years and years of practice, maybe we begin to get some deep insight into this interdependence, the fabric of our being. That is decidedly not the same thing as one and individual. Rather, in polytemporal, multiple times, polyspatial, knottings, holobionts hold together contingently. That is, like an identity is contingent, arising in that moment of awareness, moment after moment, related to everything, not alone and not separate. Multiple times, multiple spaces. Engaging other holobionts, each of us, rocks, stones, trees, human beings, cars, in complex patternings. Critters Was there a note? Yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry. Just wanted to make sure I was up on whatever needed to be up on in the notes. Critters do not precede their relatings. They make each other through semiotic material involution. Semiotic material involution. There's a wonderful, I think a wonderful, anthropologist, Ecuadorian anthropologist by the name of Eduardo Kohn, who wrote a book called How Forests Think, in which he breaks out the semiotics of the interaction of the creatures in the forest and the trees and the other complex systems. Some form of language that isn't human, that's not English. Through semiotic material involution out of beings of previous such entanglements. That's an inheritance. All of this are ancestors. Margulis, Lynn Margulis, the, in my world, famous biologist, knew a great deal about the co-opting of strangers, a phrase she proposed to describe the most fundamental practices of critters becoming with each other at every node of intra-action in Earth history. At even before the cellular level, there's a connection between the interrelationship, the intra-relationship of strangers, of difference with one another, and the importance of that in the friction or heat that creates life. So in some forms of Zen practice and Buddhist practice, literally we are the container, our body, in which earth, air, fire, and water come together, and heat emerges, and transformation, we could say alchemical transformation occurs. Like Lynn Margulis, I, Donna Haraway, use holobiont to mean symbiotic assemblages at whatever scale of space or time. So the opening paragraph, 2 lines, of the Prajnaparamita Hridaya Sutra, the Heart Sutra, refers to us Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, while practicing deeply Prajnaparamita, the perfection of wisdom, has deep insight into this aggregate and sees that it's empty, and therefore relieves all suffering. This idea of coursing deeply, practicing deeply, the perfection of wisdom is that embeddedness, that wovenness, entanglement, and the emergence, awareness of emergence from that. At whatever scale of space or time, which are more like knots of diverse, interactive relatings in dynamic, complex systems than like the entities of biology made up of pre-existing bounded units. What is the pre-existing bounded unit of John? I don't know. Dongshan, who is Dongshan? Dongshan, 8th century Zen teacher, said one of his poems, one portion of a poem of his was, "Everywhere I go, I see him. He is me, but I am not him, and I am not him." So there's this sense of, gosh, this self keeps appearing and keeps appearing and keeps appearing, and yet there's no fixed relationship with it. It's always changing. It's always emerging. To confuse ourselves with that fixed idea equals, I guess, what we would call dukkha in Buddhism. To not confuse ourselves is coursing in the perfection of wisdom. So, made up of pre-existing bounded units, genes, cells, organisms, etc., in interactions that can be conceived only as competitive or cooperative. Our little binary world. Like hers, my use of holobiont does not designate host plus symbiont, because all the players are symbionts to each other in diverse kinds of relationalities. Trying to do away with diversity, well, first, it's stupid. And second, it's totally impossible. As we do away with diversity, we do away with ourselves. Because all the players are symbionts to each other in diverse kinds of relationalities and with varying degrees of openness to attachments and assemblages with other holobionts. Symbiosis is not a synonym for mutually beneficial. Some relationships are not beneficial. The array of names needed to designate the heterogeneous, webbed patterns heterogeneous, very important word. Multiplicity, diversity. No, how should I say? Purity is not pure. A heterogeneous webbed patterns and processes of situated and dynamic dilemmas. Suzuki Roshi would say, when your struggle becomes your pleasure, there is no life without a dilemma. Multiple dilemmas, I think we have all experienced. And yet we're always, the suffering is, it's sort of like, there's got to be some place where there's not a dilemma and I have to get there. Zen awakening is there's no place without a dilemma, and here you are. Therefore, you're no longer struggling to get anywhere. And remarkably enough, as we are present with our diaphragm, with our breath, with our body, life opens. Things pass, as they say in the Vipassana world. A thought arises, abides, and disappears. A John arises, abides, disappears. The thing we thought was John wasn't John, but there was some experience. John even had an experience of John, which was not your experience of John. Dynamic dilemmas and advantages for the symbionts, holobionts, is only beginning to surface at biologists. Let go of the dictates of methodological individualism and zero-sum games as the template for explanation. I suggest we might also need a term like holo-ent. I think of the trees in the trilogy, the Ents. Will they come to our rescue now that Sauron and Palantir are at work? Holo-ent, so as not to privilege only the living, but to encompass the biotic and abiotic in dynamic, symbiotic patterning. For millions of years, bacteria lived deep in the earth. I read this recently. So that they could survive, it's surmised from our world now looking back, all of the meteoritic showers that were pummeling the earth. And as those were relieved, began to emerge and integrate with others, helping to create what we call life now. An adept in microbiology, cell biology, chemistry, geology, and paleogeography, as well as a lover of languages, arts, stories, systems theories, and alarmingly generative critters, including human beings. Margulis was a radical evolutionary theorist. Her first and most intense loves were the bacteria and archaea of Terra, the earth, the terrain, and all their bumptions and doings. That's like the Sangha. The entire Sangha, entire being, bumptions and doings, expecting everything to be, well, you're a Buddhist, you should be this way. You shouldn't do that. You're a Buddhist. The core of Margulis's view of life was that new kinds of cells, tissues, organs, and species evolve primarily through the long-lasting intimacy of strangers, of difference. The fusion of genomes in symbiosis, followed by natural selection, with a very modest role of mutation as a motor of system-level change, leads to increasingly complex levels of good enough quasi-individuality to get through the day. When I was a young guy and I went to speak to my teacher in what we call Dokusan, which is quite a, in the beginning, quite a seemingly serious and formal operation where you come in and you do all these bows and you sit pretty much nose to nose. And he looked at me and he said, "You're too interested in origins. Life is coleslaw." The other fellow, category Roshi, I came in with some idea about something. And he looked at me and he says, your mudra is crooked. I had no idea what to do with that. Okay, leads to increasingly complex levels of good enough quasi-individuality to get through the day. Perfection is not an idea of perfection. Precision is not an idea of measurement of precision. You know, like tolerances. Precision is that this is happening exactly as it is right now. Precisely. Beyond measurement. And, to some degree, we measure it. This is another good part of that. Individuality to get through the day or the eon. So you and I don't necessarily get through eons, except maybe as we might experience it, learning to sit still and listen, and letting go of the bounds of time, the constraints of time, entering deeply into the red blood cells being made in what we call our marrow. This, to some degree, to me, to a lot of degree actually, is yoga, the yoga of meditation. Margulis called the basic immortal life-making process symbiogenesis. Just a little bit more of this. Bacteria and archaea did it first. My sense is that in her heart of hearts, Margulis felt that bacteria and archaea did it all. And there wasn't much left for so-called higher order biological entities to do or invent. Cells, proteins. Eventually, however, by fusing with each other in stabilized, ongoing ways, archaea and bacteria invented the modern, complex cell. With its nucleus full of ropey chromosomes made of DNA and proteins and diverse other sorts of extranuclear organelles. I mean, this is amazing. This is, to me, one way of thinking about this and seeing this is as a visualization. Experiencing this interaction. Not unlike the visualization and working with a mandala or a tanka. We create the world, we dissolve the world. We let go of the world. The process changes us. Invented the modern complex cell with its nucleus full of ropey chromosomes made of DNA and proteins and diverse other sorts of extranuclear organelles, from undulating whips and spinning blades for locomotion to specialized vesicles and tubules for functions that work better kept separate. Because she was a founder of Gaia with James Lovelock, and a student of interlocked and multi-leveled systemic processes of non-reductionist organization and maintenance that make Earth itself and Earth's living beings unique. That's a lot to take in. Not only was she a founder of Gaia with James Lovelock, the idea, the thought, the theory, and a student of interlocked, multi-leveled systemic processes of non-reductionist organization and maintenance that make Earth itself and Earth's living beings unique. Margulis called these processes autopoietic. I think she would have often, not always, preferred the term sympoietic, but the word and the concept had not yet surfaced. Autopoiesis and sympoiesis are in generative friction rather than opposition. Self, not self. In 1998, Beth Dempster suggested the term sympoiesis for collectively producing systems that do not have self-defined spatial or temporal boundaries. Information and control are distributed among components. The systems are evolutionary and have the potential for surprising change. One of my students at Wellesley came to me and she was taking an advanced probability course at MIT. She said, the professor started the course, if you think you understand this, you don't. And therein then, the nature of what we average people understand of probability, how shall I say, is too probable. Let's see if I can go back. Yes, Beth Dempster. For surprising change. By contrast, autopoietic systems are self-producing autonomous units with self-defined spatial and temporal boundaries that tend to be centrally controlled, homeostatic, and predictable. However, as various biologists have found out, there is no static in this homeo. Everything is always moving and changing. Homeostatic and predictable. That's how we'd like our life to be, correct? There's some perfect place. Symbiosis makes trouble for autopoiesis. In symbiogenesis is even bigger trouble, a bigger troublemaker for self-organizing individual units. So this is a big deal, I think. By contrast, autopoietic systems are self-producing, autonomous units. What are we told? I'm a self-made person. Doesn't exist. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Back to our friends, the Olympia, never alone. All these self-creative beings alone, lonely. All these systems that categorize and label and fixate, that diagnose. You are this. All of this normative measurement and exclusion of diversity, the diversity of the gene pool. It gets political. Symbiosis, this idea we're talking about, this experience we're talking about, interdependence itself, makes trouble for autopoiesis. And symbiogenesis is an even bigger troublemaker for self-organizing individual units. The more ubiquitous symbiogenesis seems to be in living beings, dynamic organizing processes, the more looped, braided, outreaching, involuted, and sympoietic is terrain worlding. There's one more piece from this book, a footnote. I'm one of these people who gets lost in footnotes and bibliographies. Bear with me. This is a footnote to that paragraph that I just read. Autopoietic systems theory was crucial to formulating the concept of the Anthropocene. Lovelock and Margulis's Gaia describes complex, nonlinear couplings between processes that compose and sustain entwined but non-additive subsystems as a partially cohering systemic whole. Partially cohering. Systemic whole. As Stenger stresses, Isabel Stengers is a remarkable philosopher. A Marxist, by the way. Stenger stresses Gaia is not a nurturing mother. To me, this is a Zen teacher whacking somebody over the head. Or it's my own mother chasing me around the house with a broomstick when I was 8 years old because I was out of hand and I was bigger than her. Gaia is not a nurturing mother, but an intrusive event that undoes thinking as usual. When one looks at these Zen stories, that's all they are. Intrusive events that undo. Thinking as usual. Gaia can flip out in system collapse after system collapse. Complexity can unravel. Earth can die. This is, I think we might classify this as serious. So this was a conversation, this footnote is taken from a conversation of Isabel Stengers in conversation with Heather Davis and Etienne Turpin. The title of the piece is Matters of Cosmopolitics on the Provocations of Gaia. But Gaia's intrusive response is what is being spoken about. Stability. Developing the stability within ourselves. Not like a fixed bulwark against, but in the form of a certain Buddha by the name of Akshobhya. Akshobhya is known as the immovable one. And Akshobhya is immovable not because, again, they're a bulwark or a battery. Henry can't get through the breach because Henry's already in the breach. Just a tiny bit of Shakespeare. But this is amazingly important. We keep trying to push thoughts or feelings away. We keep trying to push people away, what we don't like. It's not that we should embrace things that are going to harm us. That's not at all what I'm saying. It's that we shouldn't be so shocked to realize that they're already here and with us, and their own etiology, if you will, their own cause of suffering is imminent in their expression. And as bodhisattvas, how do we find the bridge to the source, if you will. The broken heart at the base of greed, hate, and delusion expressed out of fear in each of us. How do we find a bridge? And maybe we can't. But Akshobhya is already present with and inclusive of the struggle and is going nowhere. So I ended a piece that I wrote today that said something like, we're going on a long and difficult pilgrimage, considering our current world geopolitics and our current world climate issues. Geopolitics includes all the economic inequality, and again, the lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I think what I'd like to do is share a couple of things I wrote, which will only take about 6 minutes. And then we can devote maybe 20 minutes to sharing what we think or how we feel or where we're at and support one another. Okay? So let's see if I can make technology work. Okay. Can we see the screen and read it? Okay, good. So the winds of the Milky Way, or listening for Cygnus. Cygnus is in the sky in the center of this photo, is the swan. In Chinese myth, the goddess of heaven discovers that Niu Lang and Ji Nu are lovers. Ji Nu is a fairy and is therefore not allowed to be with a mortal man. The goddess creates a river, the Milky Way, in the sky to keep the lovers separated. Once a year, on Chinese Valentine's Day, I didn't know there was a Chinese Valentine's Day, all the magpies, I wonder if Hallmark knows, all the magpies in the world assemble to help the lovers be together by forming an enormous bridge over the wide river. The constellation Cygnus, the swan, represents the magpie bridge in this story. And then the reference here is to this Kurt Vaughan person, the swan constellation. And then some poetic response by me. The depth and reach of breath. This is our meditation. Each breath entirely. What we take to be within or without. The expanse of space, the infinite extension without center, vanishing. Respiration, the bellows of the universe, pulsing. Heart. Moon, no moon. Stars. Shooting stars, not gun. Listen. The winds of the Milky Way, we call it breathing. Leaf, falling, floating. The squirrel who flies at night. You guessed it, on the winds of the Milky Way. Breathing. Okay. This is dedicated to two friends. I do some photography as well. Robert McFarlane describes visiting a deep underground laboratory, the Sabre experiment, situated under the North Sea near Bulby, Yorkshire, where scientists listen for faint particle signals from the Cygnus constellation, the swan. To detect dark matter, a key part of this exploration of underland spaces in his book Underland, A Deep Time Journey. In essence, McFarlane's Listening for Cygnus refers to this real scientific quest for dark matter conducted in the deep earth as a parallel to the profound hidden stories of Underland. Now, I would say being a Buddhist, but I won't even say being a Buddhist because I don't want Buddhists to get bad names because of me. I don't think that this is a quotation that I thought was helpful. Refers to this real scientific quest for dark matter as though it was he's talking about a metaphor. But I don't think that our real scientific quest is any separate from our own quests to be and to know and to fulfill what Suzuki Roshi would call our inmost request. The winds of the Milky Way won. We have no borders between yesterday and tomorrow, unless useless and useful, lifeless and alive. For us, everything breathes. Thus we protect ourselves from ourselves. I am master of my own fate. I have sought distractions and fallen hostage to them. Perhaps we remember more than we think. We ask the spruce for permission if we want to sleep in its shadow. I remember we came into this world in a dugout boat, and we depart in a dugout. In order to continue the unending cycle of life, our 3,000-year-old laments can be heard from one shore to the other, from the past to the future. Perhaps even you have heard them, but certainly our ancestors, who have rowed across the river of death to the underworld and reached the Milky Way on the wings of birds. There's a beautiful documentary made by a man named Lennart Meri, who was an ethnologist. But also he was the first president of Lithuania after they were non-communist. And I always imagine, what would it be like to have an ethnologist as a president of the United States? So I reorganized some of the words in the movie. Milky Way winds too. For 4,000 years, I changed the world, and I myself changed. I was born a bird. I rose as a wind of song under my own sky. I breathe in the midst of the tasks and joys of today. This is the local frozen vision of the Milky Way and the Charles River. And as the Milky Way, I extend across all of space. One day you too will be as old as I am. And you too will ask, have you cared for your fields and for your roots? Again, from the same documentary. I think I'll stop sharing there and see. I hesitate to say whether they're questions or are there statements? Are there sharings? I have few or no answers.
So if you have any questions or comments or reflections, feel free to raise your virtual hand and I'll call on you to unmute. Okay. Stacy.
Yeah.
This is Josh. I just had,
It says that they're not allowing you to unmute yourself. Okay, now.
hi. I just had a question about Cygnus, and
Yeah.
you were talking about dark matter.
Yeah.
Um, is that when did this take place? Before 1964?
No, actually, it was in McFarlane's book that was published maybe 10 years ago. And the saber experiment is in an old Roman salt mine in northern England that goes down into the earth, I don't know, a mile, and then heads out under the end of the under the North Sea. That's how I know it, and that's how he articulated it, as far as I know. Yeah.
Okay,
Is it?
because
Yeah. Go ahead.
I know that there's it's Cygnus X1
Yeah.
was is supposed to be the first um black hole to be
Ah.
discovered.
Uh huh.
And so I was wondering if like that dark matter had anything to do with it. They say it was like a rocket. It was a rocket exploration, 1964, and they detected this dark matter, and they suspected that it's a black hole in Cygnus.
I got you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
cool.
I have a feeling for dark matter, and that is that we, until I think recently, and maybe not even recently, we can't see dark matter, but we can infer it's there by not seeing, by what we can see. So there's this sense in my mind where I equate our feeling for what I'll call what's out there, dark matter, with our sense of proprioception in our own body, the extension of that feeling and awareness for reaching for a water cup or reaching and knowing the space and the distance. And that when we meditate, we release our senses in that sense, excuse me, to, to feel the dark matter, to feel what we haven't categorized, we haven't defined. Anyway, that's cool. Thank you, Josh.
Leaning into that idea a little bit um, of proprioception and dark matter as, something we can feel into and space and expansiveness during meditation. I always find it very interesting when, you're sitting with your eyes closed meditating and you feel like you're in this vast space. And it's something that I've actually thought about quite a bit because we ground into the body, which the physical body is intended to be this very limited container. But after grounding into the body, we move into this place of entirely open space. And it's just this really interesting dichotomy that I've been contemplating for a while.
Yes, this is, I feel strongly this is central to our practice. So in the Heart Sutra, it says no eyes, no ears, no tongue, no body, no mind, no consciousness, no blah, blah, blah. And that doesn't mean that what we take to be eyes don't exist, that we take to be seeing doesn't exist. It largely means freeing ourselves of our concept and control of our senses, to actually release our senses to inform us, rather than what I would describe as a executive function top-down relationship with our experience of being. And therefore, in a modern world, being an object, a subject, and everything else an object. But, for example, the nature of shikantaza, or I would presume, not having followed the full course, Ati or Mahamudra or Dzogchen, is no subject as well. And yet, still alive, connected with everything, and freeing ourselves to be present with those senses rather than, in some ways, defined and constricting, moral, conceptual moral about our bodies. The freedom, literally, to be present to our anus and our perineum and our genitals and our hips and our shoulders and our mucus. This is Buddhist meditation. It does not exclude, it excludes nothing. And particularly what we don't know, it doesn't exclude. Yeah, it's a wonderful way of being with it. Thank you. And at the same time, it excludes nothing. At the same time, it doesn't mean that we kill things. So what does that mean? Where does the not come in when we feel viscerally interconnected with all beings? And if we go back to our friends the Inupiat, when they go off on a whale hunt, they carry a carved whale with them and hold that whale as the whale spirit. And when they come to the whale that they're going to kill, they literally pull up alongside the whale and look in the eye. Literally have a conversation, so to speak, with the whale. A relationship. And literally, they don't kill more whales than they need. But there's this sense of back and forth, of reciprocity, of not exactly mutual beneficial. One of my favorite stories like this is from a book called The Falling Sky. And it's by a Yanomami, northern Brazilian tribe, shaman by the name of Davi Kopanawa, and in which he gives a description of what we would call the great hunter in their tribe. And why this hunter is so what we would brand as successful is that the creatures who are their prey fall in love with them. Because the creatures know that they will give the bounty of their hunt to their entire community and will hold nothing back for themselves. So built into being in the forest, being in the world, there's this sense of mutuality that goes beyond even self-identity. There would be what some psychologists are beginning to call an intersubjective relationship. There's a piece that I actually included in another piece I was going to read, but I was reading about East European indigenous peoples' practice as shaman and what they called, he labeled as transfiguration. But at some point there was a space where the languages between species dissolved. And this is the nature, I think, of what I've described for the Inupiat and what I described for Davi Kopanawa and the Yanomami, which is quite foreign to us. And yet, as we open to our bellies and our guts, this comes alive. That's the nature of compassion in my experience.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Suze. Yeah.
You know, when you said everything pulses. I certainly could relate to that. And it's, when we sit still in meditation, still like a mountain, um, we know if we could be attuned to what's going on in our own body, which is not stillness at all, and then take that outside of our container and feel, I mean, this is not easy, but if we can feel that same pulsing around us in things that we think are solid and unmoving, it's quite an extraordinary sense of interbeing
Mhm.
and embodying that knowledge that we are not alone
Mhm.
and that we are pulsing with the rest of the universe, and the world around us. So thank you.
Yeah. It's, it sounds like a nice concept. Literally, we are the Milky Way. We are Lineakea, supercluster, 500 million uh, light years across, breathing. Now, that's entanglement. Not being a physicist. Um, but that's in my experience, the nature of what I'll call the yogic effects of meditation in relationship. This Edward Kanza, famous Buddhist scholar, in his book Buddhist Thought in India, describes the two different modalities, the Western modality of objective study and the metaphysics or the philosophy that emerges from the yogic experience in India. And it's quite remarkable, the difference that's set up here. Um, we we've been trained not to trust our experience, and the gut that we have to trust is sick because we don't have a harmonious relationship with our bodies, whatever harmonious means. But it's not like an idea of we're seeking harmony. Everything is already harmonic. And it's sort of like listening to the tuning fork, you know, being on key, so to speak. Yeah. What's our child holding? Are these nourishing bits? I can't see them. Can you
Hi.
unmute? Hi.
Yeah, okay. No, yes, he's got a lot of choices. He's got two different kinds of yogurt and a and a piece of bran muffin. He had a piece of challah bread. He has cheese. The lengths we'll go to get him to eat anything.
Gotcha. I gotcha. Yeah, yeah,
Say hi. Say hi.
yeah.
It's
Everybody.
interesting you bring up the body and the perineum and all of that because I had a very hard time connecting with all of that until I had a baby. But it's such
Sure.
a embodied experience carrying, the whole pregnancy through postpartum that it just sort of blew open my relationship with my body in a way that I don't know, I wasn't prepared for.
Yeah, yeah. Our world doesn't prepare us.
No, it certainly doesn't.
There's uh, my favorite interpretation of Zen, if you will, is a line from the Funkadelics called "They say free your mind and your ass will follow, But I say the Zen experience is free your ass and your mind will follow. And this is so important,
Yeah.
totally important. We live in a world where we protect ourselves from our bodies, from the natural course. I don't natural, but whatever this is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and we become and our idea of beauty is like that contained, controlled concept. Um, but the experience of the beauty, in my experience, although I've never given birth, I've been present at births. The beauty and luminosity of the room, the spaciousness, the
Mm-hmm.
love is so, it's like you're floating with the release finally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just stunning. And likewise, when we're with one another in end of life circumstances. So the stability to be present is something that our culture doesn't provide.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know how much it would affect my relationship with my body in a practice, in a Zen way, I suppose. Although it's Zen or not Zen.
Yeah, well, exactly. Zen is just some word.
Yeah.
And people have really strange ideas in relationship to
Yeah.
it. You can get your hair done in a Zen way, or your fingernails,
Yeah.
or your eyebrows braided. Or you can, make a religion and with a theology, but with a hierarchy and all that other stuff. But why?
You asking a Dharma question?
Yes.
I learn a lot from him, his Dharma questions.
Oh, sure. I was going to share a poem in which, when I was a young guy, like when I say young guy, I might have been 8 or so. Um, I was an only child. I still am an only child. But I would walk down the street, whether I was with friends or not, and I would mouth syllables. Oh, or even speak in uh, what will we call them? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sort of sounding like I was some other language, like French or whatever, or even what I imagine to be Native American or Native First Peoples language. People thought that was strange, but I was so intrigued by the sound of syllables, what we call syllables, yeah. And there's a language, there's a semiotics to the whole thing, what we call semiotics, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, John, for being here with us today.
It's wonderful. May I
The
offer
teachings were
one little
awesome.
thing to close? Yeah,
Yes.
okay. So A, if we're starting with order, I just want to thank deeply the Natural Dharma Fellowship for your existence and for welcoming me here to share any number of times, and hopefully in the future. Second, we end most of these activities in. I'm sure we do this in the Tibetan world too, to which I've had some exposure. Dedication of the merit. So we've put some effort forth. We've come together. We've met. We've felt some energy. Here's my closing, if you will. May our intention equally extend to every being and place with the true merit of Buddha's way. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it. All Buddhas, 10 directions, 3 times. All honored ones, bodhisattvas, mahasattvas. Wisdom beyond wisdom, maha prajna paramita. So thank you and take care. Enjoy the day.